Hello, my name is Jonathan Hadel, and I produce under the name Pink Buddha, and I'm here today to talk about the Akai Force and potentially answer this question for you. Is this the right instrument for you? Or more specifically, is this the right instrument for you instead of the Ableton Push? And I'm just going to share with you some of the reasons why I chose the Force, even though I'm basically an Ableton guy. I've used it for years, had the first push and the second one, but here I am with the Force. I sold my push, which is sort of ironic because a year ago I bought the Force thinking this is what I was looking for, but there were so many problems with it in the beginning, and honestly, Akai, the way that they responded to people on the forum who were having these issues with this first half-baked instrument when it came out, didn't give me a lot of faith that they were going to follow through. So I switched back to using the push. But they've made so many updates lately that I really believe in where the Force is going, and I made the leap back. So anyways, enough of that. Let me jump in. All right, we're going to look at this in three different parts. Part one will be the things that I really like about the Force and why I ultimately helped me to choose it. Part number two is going to be the things that are basically the same, so you can understand that what you maybe wanted on the push, you're going to be getting on the Force. And part number three are the things that I'm still really frustrated about. And if you're considering the Force, I would want you to know about before making that purchase. Okay, so let's talk about the good features. It may seem like a simple thing, but honestly, I love these pads on the Force. They feel more akin to the pads on the first push, which I actually liked a lot better. They felt they were more responsive. I feel like the second push, oftentimes the velocity scaling is really off to me. It's very harsh, like if I even just bump a note, it sometimes triggers it. The Force, it's really sensitive. I love them. If you're someone who likes to play the pads, you're really going to like the way that the Force feels. Secondly, the way that you get to play these pads is also really innovative. You have a number of different modes. You have chromatic, which is the straightforward way, and different scales, Dorian scales, mixolydian, and all that kind of stuff, which is very similar to how the push is. However, there's a way that it takes it further, and that's doing this piano view where you have C here and C here, and these are all the white notes. And then you have the black notes here. So as a piano player, I look at this, it's very easy for me to see different octaves, and I can play notes. The push chromatic view, it felt like I was learning something entirely different, but if you know how to play a keyboard, you can look at this piano view and immediately kind of know your way around. They also have a guitar view, which turns this into the 6 strings of a guitar. And so they go in Force, except for this interval here is a third, which is just like on the guitar to go to the B string, and then another fourth again to go to the E string. The only thing that feels a little bit weird about it, I play guitar a little bit too, is I kind of feel like I want to reach my hand around to play the scales that direction, not this direction. I'm not used to playing it that way. I guess if you were used to playing the slide guitar, or at least a guitar on its back, and played the notes that way, it would be very familiar to you. But you can also choose a bass fingering, which turns it into like a 6-string bass, which is also a little bit weird, but all the strings are now a fourth apart, as they would be on a bass guitar. And then they have this tonettes one that's just is kind of fun to play with. It just is a little bit wacky. Anyways, there's lots of scale choices, and I really like seeing just how Akai took what they had done with the push initially and pushed it even further. Pushed it even further. That was a bad pun. Okay, so the step sequencer would look familiar to what you would see on Ableton, where you have your 16 pad grid, 4x4. This side over here is velocity scaling. So if you want to quickly lay in your drum beat, you could pick the highest one and then maybe the softer one would become next. The blue is a great feature because it actually changes the velocity based upon how hard you hit this pad. So if you hit it hard, it turns red. If you hit it soft, it's the lightest velocity. It's a nice way that you could easily drop in some notes with the kind of velocity that you want without having to go back and forth between these velocity scale pads. Now, another nice side of the step sequencer is the ability to choose lanes. So in this view, each of these lanes is a different pad. So you have the bass note here and the other ones that go along with it. So if I sketch those in, and this is a great way to program your beats in a very linear manner. If you want to zoom in closer, you hold down the sequencer button and you can increase the resolution. So I'm zooming in now, so it's every little pad is a 32nd beat and then a 64th beat, 16th note. So if you want to jump into this and add some faster notes, you could pop in here like this, put in the faster notes, come back to your 16th notes, and now they're already included in there. That's a really nice feature. What gets a little awkward is when you're trying to follow along. It doesn't scroll. I wish there was a scrolling feature. You have to push this button and then jump to the page that you want to go to. So that's a little bit awkward, but it is a nice way to lay in your beats in a more linear fashion. Now, one really nice feature of the Force is the ability to be able to see your notes and your clips at the same time. So if we hold down notes and launch, it allows me to be able to see my clip here. If I want to move that position around, I can scroll that independent of my drum pads here. So you could be looking at something on the screen up here, maybe the XY pattern, and be able to launch your clips from this view and be able to play the pads here. And you launch your clips here. It's great. I mean, I really can't say enough great things about this split screen, because if I was using the push, you're on the launch view and then you have to kind of like start your clip and then jump over the notes and pop back, and there was a lot of switching back and forth that would have to happen. Here they can just end up on the same pad. Now granted, it's smaller, so it shrinks down your usable pad space for either the launching of the clips or playing of the pads, but it works on the note view as well when I do the split portion of it. So you can play your melodic lines and launch clips as well. And the last of the features that I put in the good, or great category that make the Force really exceptional are these knobs. They're very similar to the push in that you can adjust the volume, set it to adjust the volume, or pan or sending to different effects, as well as adjusting whatever happens to be on that particular screen. So if you're on the clip view, then this adjusts the start and stop time, again, very much dynamically changing to whatever's on the screen. However, it goes a step further in that you can choose a project setting that allows you to program these knobs to be whatever you want them to be. So this particular setting has them adjusting the filter, frequency, and the resolution. And no matter what I change to, if I move to the melodic one, it's still a macro knob that controls some of the master settings, whether that be a volume or whatever you want it to be. put anything up there you want to. It can control something at the overall master level, or it can control a specific parameter for a specific track. One of the things that I like about these knobs is they also can be momentary. So for example, how that works, if I turn the filter to momentary, then whenever I'm playing and I let go, it pops back to exactly where I set it in the first place. And that is something that is not possible in the push, and I love it. It's such a great way to be able to set up your knobs to affect the parameters that you most need in a performance setting. You have these 8 knobs here, push the button again, and you have knobs 9 through 16. So very quickly you can have 16 programmable knobs at your disposal. There's only one part of these knobs that isn't very intuitive and doesn't make a lot of sense, and I only discovered it by accident, which is if you go to menu and you then click on the XY pad here and you change the knob to the screen, which you'd think would be affecting this XY pad screen, but it's not. It's actually sort of something different. It's now the global tempo that you're adjusting, and the timing corrections strength of the quantization swing. So I don't really get why that's connected with this screen. I don't know. I don't know why it's on this particular screen. But besides this little bit of confusion, these knobs are awesome. I love them. Okay, let's talk about some of the features that I would consider to be the indifferent features that were lacking when they came out with the Force initially, but have now been improved, so at least they're on par with where the Push and Ableton might be, and it's now functional. And one of the weirdest features that you think would be such a small thing but can be really disruptive and annoying is the undo button. Initially, the undo button was like aggro aggressive, and it would undo sometimes way more than you wanted it to. Initially, you hit the undo and it's like your whole thing got deleted and you're like, what the hell? I didn't want to go that far. So that was annoying. Now there's kind of a soft undo and it kind of works its way back slowly. So that's really important. Another thing that was a much needed improvement is if you were in a clip, the only thing that you could draw in there in terms of the automation was velocity. That was it. So, which is great if you want to just change the velocity, but oftentimes if you're using automation, you have far more things that you want to go in and change. Now you can choose between pretty much anything that you want to add. You could add in specific parameters for a patch or things from the mixer, an effect, whatever they might be. You put those in there and you can take this edit knob here and draw them in and change your automation curve, whatever you need to do. In some of the recent updates to Force, you are also able to change the color of the clips, which is so important if you're trying to lay out a very complex song, to be able to color coordinate them. Click on the clip up in this screen, click on settings, and then you're able to change the color to whatever you want it to be. Another key thing that they upgraded was the ability to record fixed clip lengths. Previously that didn't exist and you had to actually get back in there and hit the clip to make it stop in time. It's a huge hassle. Now you push Shift and the length button and you're able to choose the default clip length that you want to use. And the last thing I put in the indifferent category, which is a really big rollout, but it really just brings it up to being on par with the Push, is the ability for the Force to be able to control Ableton. And there's a lot of videos on that, so I'm not going to go into actually how that works, but I do want to show you how quick and easy it is. You just hold this menu button down, hit Live Control, and bam, you're right there in Ableton. And you want to move out of it, you could just click Matrix and now you're back into the Force controlling. So it is so fast just to be able to jump between the Force and Ableton. If you want to go back again without having to put it in standalone when I did use the MPC Live and you wanted to be able to control Ableton, it was basically like going from forward to reverse. And I just love how quick and easy this is. So again, it's not particularly that innovative. If you were going to get a push, it would obviously be able to control Ableton as well. The real question is whether or not you want all the other things the Force is able to do, and it can also kind of function as a push controller for Ableton as well. Now granted, I just want to couch that by saying that the Push is a beautifully designed instrument that integrates perfectly with Ableton, and the Force is like not quite so synergistically integrated with Ableton, but it really does the job. If you watch some videos on it, it can go pretty deep in terms of its ability to control Ableton. Okay, so now that we've talked about the really great aspects about the Force, things that are kind of indifferent or just essentially pretty much on par with where the Push is at, let's talk about the ugly, the things that are frustratingly behind where the Push is at, considering that Akai made the first Push. I don't really understand how that works, but anyways, here they are. So in no particular order, number one is the no repeat function. On the Push, you have that great ability to switch and pick the different speeds, which is really nice. It's the button push that doesn't exist on the Force. So that already is like a diminishment. But when you're using the drums and you're doing the no repeat, you can choose, do this to select it. I'm going to do that, move it to no repeat. Turn this on. You have to come in here and do a little menu diving to change the speed on it. So it's definitely not convenient to do on a spur of the moment decision. And you push softer, then the notes get softer, and you push harder, it gets louder. And that works the same way it does for the Push with regard to the drums. However, when you switch over to the instrument, it doesn't work that way. For what reason, I don't know. But the no repeat or the arpeggiator, whichever one you choose, I'm going to switch it back to the arpeggiator just so when we get to that part of it, I can jump right into it. It continues to repeat at the velocity with which you first hit it. So if you hit it soft, it's going to repeat at a low velocity. No matter what happens after that, you could push hard, but it doesn't get any louder or softer. And when you're playing an arpeggiated note, the velocity stays at the degree to which you hit each note. So here, I hit the first note harder, and these other ones are quiet. Now that could be kind of cool if you wanted the notes to be able to be at different velocities, but what's really frustrating and what feels so intuitive when you play the Push is that when you push harder, it gets louder. And I don't know why that's not a component of how this works when you use an instrument. Secondly, I think an element that's pretty frustrating is there's no dedicated tempo knob. You can kind of get there to it when you get to this particular screen, but this screen isn't customizable. Where I would want it to be is on the project page. This is where I want all the things that have to do at a macro level, the filters, different effects, the tempo. You have the tap tempo that you can adjust, and if you hold that down, you can change the global tempo. But if the music is playing while you're doing that, by pushing the tap tempo down, it can sometimes throw off the tempo already. So that's pretty frustrating. It feels like, especially in a live setting, you want to be able to make subtle adjustments to your tempo in a very easy way without having to menu dive to get to it. So what's up, Akai? Just make it programmable on the project knobs. Doesn't seem like that'd be that hard. Another really frustrating feature about the Force is that you can't move your tracks around in terms of the order that they are laid out, which means that you have to be really strategic about how you want to set up your tracks before you really get started. It doesn't really allow you to change it up after you've already begun. You can delete tracks. That's a little abrupt. I mean, if I delete a track that's further in, it's going to push everything over, but you can't expand it to insert a track in there. I could copy one of these tracks over here into one of these earlier spots, but it's going to overwrite what was there, not push everything over. In a similar way, the plugins are also not movable. So once you put them in one of these 4 slots, that's where they're going to stay, unless you delete it and then add it at a later slot, but you're going to have to re-add all your settings all over again. What I would love to see is the ability to be able to slide these around, because there's so many times that I end up wanting to change the signal flow, and now I'm stuck with kind of what I have already set. My workaround is that I go into slot 2 or 3 first and leave spot 1 or 2 open so that I have a space to go back and insert something if I really want to. Seems like that should be something they would be changing in the future, so fingers crossed on that. The other thing that I find really frustrating about the Force, which works so beautifully on the Push, is the quantization. I'd love to be able to click on the quantize button and hold it down and be able to immediately adjust the degree to which that I would, like 60% quantization and the resolution. Super easy to just engage that and turn it off. I particularly liked using that feature because I like things to be a little bit more humanized, and I wanted to put the low degree of quantization on and hit it once, see if that helped out, and I could hit it again a few more times to kind of slowly tighten it up. And if I didn't want it on there, then I wouldn't hit the quantize button. In the Akai world, there's this kind of weird mixture between quantize and then timing correction, and they both sort of do the same thing. Timing correction, you sort of leave it on and then it works all the time. You could put it down to 0. If I was trying to duplicate what I did on the Push, I'd have to leave it at 0, record something, listen to see if it needed quantization, come back to timing correction, turn it up, the strength up a little bit, hit do it, put it on, see if that worked, and then go back to it, timing correction, turn this down to 0 again so that it wasn't affecting future performances and recordings, and go back and forth between that. It just feels really cumbersome. It seems more suited for someone who's going to put on quantization and leave it on, and then it would work fine if that's kind of your workflow. It's just that if you want something to be a little bit more nuanced, besides more strict and consistently applied quantization, I found it to be really frustrating. Another thing I feel like is frustrating about the Force is how it works with the MIDI tracks or the CV tracks. When you turn those on, they utilize the same sort of note pattern that you've selected for your piece, whether that be chromatic or using the keyboard and all that. And that works great if you're sending melodic notes out to maybe an external keyboard or a sound module or modular gear that's note-based. Where that doesn't work as well is if you're sending out MIDI notes to a drum machine or to modular drum gear, because this format is not a fun way to program drums. You can do it, this would be C, and you could set up your drums so that it kind of follows a format, but there's no color coordination that happens with the note view for melodic, which is how all MIDI and CV tracks are. They're set up as melodic tracks. I would love them to be like the drum tracks, so you could change the color on them. I don't know why they didn't make it so that you could choose a drum track and assign this to be different MIDI notes going out potentially on different MIDI channels or the same MIDI channels. Well, however you want it to organize. It could be the same MIDI channel. I would totally take that. But I'd love to be able to program it like you do the drum programming. That would just be so appropriate. And so it feels a little counterintuitive to use the MIDI tracks, the melodic ones, for drum programming. So those are some of the good and different and ugly things about the Force that influenced my switch from using the Push to this instrument, and things I'm excited about, things I'm frustrated with. I hope that informs your decision on what you're choosing to do. Maybe you choose neither of them. So if you liked this video and found it helpful, hit the like button. Maybe leave a comment below on your own opinions about this Push v Force discussion we got going on here. And really, every point I brought up today could be a pro or con to somebody else in a different way based upon how they want to use this. So there's no right or wrong answers here. And if you want to hear more videos like this with some tips and tricks, or just me performing on and making music in general, hit the subscribe button with the bell so you're notified when it comes out, and hopefully I'll see you later.